At this point, my hope is that investing is feeling a lot less scary and intimidating. It might even feel simple or easy. History shows us that all we have to do is make regular contributions to a properly diversified investment portfolio for a very long period of time. That is how simple the recipe can be for investing success. But the reality is anything but that. Year after year, we see similar articles being published, all pointing towards the same thing, that, in a lot of cases, the majority of people feel underprepared for retirement, and that for an increasing number of people, the idea of retirement is becoming more of a fantasy than a reality. The truth is, there's a huge difference between something being simple and something being easy. The formula for investing success is simple, meaning that it can be broken down into simple to understand components. Things like making regular contributions, investing in a diversified way, and investing for a very long period of time. History shows us that these things all lead to success, and on their own, there's nothing really too complicated or difficult about them. But even though investing can be simple, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is easy. There can be a lot of hurdles to overcome along the way, and we often feel a lot of resistance towards the things that we know we should do, but just don't. It's similar to how being healthy is simple. All we need to do is exercise regularly and eat well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, and we see that reflected in the world around us. A lot of people fail to meet their investing potential because they fail to plan effectively. It's important to understand where we go wrong, and almost by default, what hurdles are in our way, whether we're aware of them or not. Before we get into the reasons, I want to introduce an idea. Instead of thinking of our lives as one self from birth until death, we can think of our lives as being made up of different versions of ourselves. At every given moment, we have a past self, a present self, and a future self. Although we are always us, we do change over time. If you think about who you were 10 years ago and describe that person, it could sound like a completely different person than who you are today. But that person is most definitely you. It couldn't be anyone else. Introducing the idea of different versions of ourselves throughout our lives is important because it's going to help us better understand our default thinking and how our default thinking guides and misguides us. The first reason that we're going to take a look at is anchoring to the present. This likely stems from our brain's natural instincts, which for a long time we relied on to help us survive. But as our world has become safer, and we're not worried about getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, the instincts that once helped our ancestors survive no longer serve us in the same way. For 99.9% of human history, there was never a need to think too far ahead into your future. The present and everything that came with it was dangerous enough. Focusing on your present instead of daydreaming about your future probably meant surviving in more instances than not. Remember, retirement only became a possibility for the majority of people less than 100 years ago, so it's still a relatively new concept, a blink of an eye in human history. We often put too much emphasis on the present, making whatever is happening today feel more important than it actually is, and more important than anything that could happen in the future. This distorts our perception of the future and often leads to us making decisions that we later regret down the road, once whatever it was going on has passed. Think of it as wavelengths. Each wave is the same length of time. In the present, each measure of time feels more significant. We can see this by longer, more stretched out wavelengths. As time goes on, though, the same length of time feels less significant. It looks smaller and compressed. Even though it all represents the same thing, we can make it feel different. We overvalue immediate rewards and discount future rewards. The more immediate a reward, the more we overvalue it. But the opposite is also true. When choosing between two distant rewards, we're more likely to assess them similarly, and even choose the more distant option granted that it has a higher reward. We're more likely to say that we'll eat healthy in the future than we are for our next meal. Or we're more likely to commit to working out in the future than we are to start right now. In the long term, we choose what we think is the correct response, whereas in the short term, we often revert to the most convenient option. There's 3 main schools of thought as to why we are so impulsive. 1. The future is uncertain, and because the present is happening right now, it is very certain. 2. We magnify present emotions, making them feel more important than they are. Just imagine how many times you felt like something was the end of the world, yet here we are. And 3. We don't perceive time linearly. The closer time is, the longer it feels. This makes it more difficult to be patient in the present. Because we spend our lives in the present, it's easy to anchor to our emotions and decisions to the things that are happening right now. Although in the moment it feels like we're making the right decisions, in hindsight, we often don't. The second reason builds on anchoring, and is something that we're all very familiar with: procrastination. We have a tendency to prioritize our present self over our future self. Think about a task that you're putting off right now. What is it, and how long have you been putting it off for? We tend to believe that our future self will want to do something that our present self does not want to do. In my experience, if I don't want to do something today, the chances of me being super excited to do in the future are very low. Procrastination is a battle between our past, present, and future selves. And we tend to procrastinate because we believe that our future feelings will be less intense and substantial than they are today. We don't give our future feelings the same weight that we do to our present feelings. This is true for smaller tasks and also larger commitments. In the future, you're sure to find yourself committed to things that your past self didn't want to do at the time. In his book, Feel Good Productivity, author Ali Abdaal writes, "Every time you're presented with a request for a few weeks' time, think, would I be excited about this commitment if it was happening tomorrow? Or am I only thinking about saying yes to it because it's easier to make it a problem for my future self?" Essentially, if it isn't a hell yeah, it's not worth doing. Generally, we tend to put things off that we know we should do now, expecting that our future self will either be more excited to do these things or have more time to do these things in the future. Either assumption rarely turns out to be true, and in most cases our lives become busier with other things that we didn't see coming. If we put things off, expecting that we'll be able to more easily do them in the future, we're likely creating the opposite reality for ourselves. The final reason that we're going to take a look at is that we project our present feelings and emotions onto a future self that might not feel the same way. We know that our feelings change all of the time, sometimes even drastically, but we tend to make decisions for our future based on what we are feeling right now, rather than trying to put ourselves in our future selves' shoes, which could give us some clues as to how they might feel at the time. When we arrive at the consequences of a past decision that was made in this way, it's easy to see the flaws in the decision and wonder what you were thinking at the time. We tend to look forward, imagining very little change between who we are today and who we'll be in the future. But if we look back, in let's say 10-year intervals, it's crystal clear to see the changes that have taken place. The descriptions of who you were at each 10-year interval could sound like a completely different person. Our default is to think very little will change in the future, but if we've always thought like that, looking back and seeing all the change that has taken place should be an indication of how much change we can expect to happen in the future. When we're making decisions for our future, we have to acknowledge that they will be a slightly different version of ourselves. They won't share 100% of our current thoughts, feelings, or emotions. We have to understand that they are equally important to us, as we are now, and discouraging that fact will be doing our future selves a disservice. In order to find a permanent solution, we have to fully understand the problem. As incredible as our brains are, they evolved in a world that's completely different from the world we live in today. It can cause problems because the default settings of our brains are designed to respond to things that aren't relevant to us anymore. It can be like trying to run modern software on outdated hardware. The good news is that we're more than capable of adapting our ancient brains to modern problems. We have all the tools that we need, and what we need to do aligns more with adjusting our default settings than looking for a complete overhaul. And the sooner we're able to change our default settings, the sooner we can benefit from all the positive change they create.